Joining us now to discuss this battle is Ohio Senate candidate and author of Hillbilly Elegy, JD Vance. JD, thank you so much for joining the show. Now, listen, I laid out there some of my proposals for how we can take action, because I believe that's what's necessary here, not calling out their hypocrisy. Let's take actual action. Let's utilize and leverage our power, particularly where we have it in significant measure in red states. I, for instance, think that we need to ban mask and vaccine mandates, especially for children. I think that we need to tax university endowments. I think those are strong ideas, and I think they're ones that you are behind. Would you like to espouse more on those ideas and others? How do you think that we in the right can take the initiative and start to battle back and use our political power effectively against these nihilist leftists?
Yeah, this is such an important point. I think first principles, we should recognize that the biggest difference between the left and the right in our country, it's not big government, small government, low taxes, high taxes. It's that the left is enthusiastic about using power, and establishment conservatives are terrified of using power. So we should absolutely do those things that you suggested. Another couple of ideas, just because I think the universities are basically the cancerous tumor that sits at the heart of American progressive corruption. I think that we should basically tell the universities, if you're teaching critical race theory, if you're teaching radical gender ideology, you don't get another dime of our money. Absolutely tax the endowments, but also tell the universities they need to stop teaching the next generation of Americans to hate their country. That would free up resources, by the way, to invest in the trades and in other skills. But we absolutely have to go after the universities in this country. If we don't, we're going to see the ideas in the university infect our corporations, infect our schools, infect our churches. In fact, that's what's happening right now, and we have to push back against it, not just, as you said, point out the hypocrisy.
Yeah. Well, JD, I think calling out that hypocrisy and taking action goes hand in hand. Obviously, there are so many situations where this is going on. What I find interesting, though, obviously these numerous situations, you had Pelosi in San Francisco, no mask. You had the Obama's birthday party, a lot of people with no masks on. So many instances where you see these elected officials, where the cameras are rolling and they put the masks on real quickly so that everybody knows that they have their mask on. What I find interesting is that they really don't seem to care if anybody finds out. What do you think's going on with that?
Well, I think it shows they feel very confident in their position, Jenna. They know that they're in power, and they know that, us peasants can't do anything to push back against it. But of course, we have the Constitution, we have our republic, and we can push back against it. We just have to be willing to do it. One of the interesting things that the left has talked a lot about the last few years is eliminating qualified immunity for police officers, which of course would make our streets even more lawless, expose our police officers to even more consequences. You, Jenna, mentioned public officials not following their own rules. What about looking into, if you're a local prosecutor who lets a scumbag back into somebody's community and they go and kill a cop or they go and kill an innocent person, why don't we talk about exposing those people to consequences? Again, we've got to wake up to the game that the left is playing. There are solutions to these problems. We just have to stop being so afraid to actually advocate for them.
JD, to this point of these leftists who are in power being so aloof from us and, frankly, not caring what they think, I think that's been evident lately in a lot of statements out of the administration regarding the shortages that are out there in America right now, which in some cases are really severe. Just today from the White House podium, we had Jen Psaki make a snide remark about, oh, darn, your treadmill might be late, as if that's not significant, by the way, for Americans, and particularly for the people who make and ship those treadmills. But also Mayor Pete got in on the act, somebody who right now should be at the helm of trying to figure out this transportation and shortages logjam in the United States. Let's listen to what Mayor Pete had to say.
If you think about those images of ships, for example, waiting at anchor on the West Coast, every one of those ships is full of record amounts of goods that Americans are buying because demand is up, because income is up, because the president has successfully guided this economy.
So, JD, to my point, I think what he's effectively saying there is, be thankful for the little that you get. Be thankful for the scraps. Peasant is effectively his message. But again, I don't just want to point out their hypocrisy. I want to get to action. And in this case, so I'd like to get your reaction, first of all, to Pete Buttigieg. But then I'd also like to get your thoughts on an action item, because to me, the action item here is we can't be dependent on foreign sourcing to the degree we are. We need tariffs. We need protectionism. Your thoughts, JD?
I agree with that totally. We absolutely need tariffs and protectionism. Of course, this is one of the most important insights of Donald Trump and our entire country is that we cannot be economically dependent on foreign countries that hate us. It's one of the fundamental principles that guided American policy for 200 years, and we forgot it until Donald Trump reminded us that it's important to be a self-sufficient, independent economy. The Biden administration is totally disregarding that entire worldview, even though it served us very well for the 4 years that Trump was in office, and I think could produce long-term prosperity if we actually followed that in a bipartisan way. We need Democrats and Republicans to commit to self-sufficiency in our country. It can't just be the Republicans, especially when the Democrats are in power. And at the end of the day, the thing that Pete is, I think, revealing about the Democrat mindset is they're going to be basically arguing that supply shortages, that people not being able to get things they need is actually good. We're one rhetorical step away from them saying it's great that people are paying 60% more for home heating. It's great that people can't buy ground beef because it's so expensive. That is the level of contempt and scorn they have for their own citizens.
JD, I know you're out there meeting with voters on a regular basis. You're probably getting an earful. So much has obviously changed in this country since Joe Biden took office, mostly for the worse. I can't think of anything that's really improved since that's happened. What do you tell them in regards to these mandates? I'm sure they're so frustrated. What do we do? These vaccine mandates that I'm facing at work, the mask mandates if I go inside a building. What do you hear? What are you telling them in terms of, other than go to the polls, obviously, in 2022? What's your advice?
Well, my first piece of advice is always to look for the religious and health exemptions. You know, we've talked to a lot of people, even helped some people get some exemptions from these vaccine mandates, people who've had COVID before, people who can get a letter from their doctor. There are ways, in some cases, not all, unfortunately, but in some cases there are ways to get around the mandates. And the second thing I tell people is don't comply if you can. Obviously, some people, they're about to lose their jobs. I empathize with that. But at the end of the day, the only way to push back against this stuff is for the citizens to stand up and say, enough is enough. Follow the lead of Southwest airline employees, follow the lead of workers all over the country who I think are crippling these tyrannical corporations and the tyrannical government that's forcing the shot on people who don't want it.